little bit about Buzz on Earth Media. For anybody who is new and doesn't know, Buzz on Earth Media is a leading media hub dedicated to mainstreaming sustainability, wellness, and coexistence. It is a one-stop shop for sustainability stories, innovation, thought leadership, and eco-friendly brands. And the audience, they tell me, are from over 190 countries, which is 95% of the countries in the world by my calculation, reaching 7,800 cities and with numbers growing every day. So they're really defining sustainability edge as a new growth imperative. And Buzz on Earth is rated among the top 10 sustainability YouTube channels globally. The record of this conversation, along with the one I had with Jayesh last week, will be on their YouTube channel. Is #1 in India for 2020. And it ranks in the top 30 of sustainability blogs globally, listing by a feed post ratings. So some impressive credentials. But this series on governance, of which I think this is the third episode, is a recent innovation, an exciting one, and one that I hope will take us around the world. And of course, after my session today, the plan is that Joe will be the host in a couple of weeks' time. And I'm sure he's been thinking about who he might invite to be his guest. I can't wait for that. But Joe, let's start with some questions because I have a lot to get through and we have only 56 minutes left after my waffling. You've had a fascinating career path that originally had you set, like so very many of my other Nigerian friends, in a legal direction, but then somehow you veered off. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? And if there was any particular moment when governance suddenly took over your professional life and became such a vocation that I see it as now.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Always a pleasure, of course, to see you again. And we do miss you in Nigeria, so do return as soon as possible. And thanks for the kind words. Yes, I did start off as a lawyer, and I actually started reading law at a very young age. And when you start reading law before your 16th birthday, you sort of grew up believing that most of the problems of the world can be solved by the law. So if people just did what the law said, then there wouldn't be so many problems in society. So that's what I grew up believing. And then I started off doing practicing and realized that I was doing more of pro bono cases. I was taking cases for people who were being discriminated against, and widows whose late husbands' families wanted to take their land with which they were feeding their kids. And so I started thinking, am I ever going to make any money from this law? Because I kept fighting causes and doing things for free. And then I think the turning point was when the Secret Service, a Secret Service car climbed the pavement and killed a friend of mine who had just got married and his wife was expecting twins. And so I did what I felt was the perfectly sensible thing, which was to sue the civil service for compensation. On reflection, it wasn't entirely sensible in a military regime, headed by a dictator. And so, to cut a long story short, I had to find my way to the UK. But that experience made me realize that, there are people who actually make the laws. There are people which is the legislature. There are people who interpret the laws, which is the judiciary, and there are people who enforce the law, which is the executive arm of government. And collectively, this group of people known as governments were actually far more powerful than I'd initially realized. And so I thought, if I'm going to then affect society, then I need to find a way to work on improving the way that citizens are governed. And that was what veered me off. I still continue to, I still requalified as a solicitor in the UK, so I'm still a UK solicitor. But most of my working life has been spent on trying to improve the way government works so that whenever citizens come in contact with government, their experience is a more pleasant one. And that's what I've dedicated my life to.
Great. Well, thank you. I've heard a lot of your stories, but I've never heard that one. So, you know, it's always good to have another Joe Abah story to start the day off very well. And I know that you're in your second stint with DAI, where turning ideas into action is said to be the name of the game. But sandwiched between these two roles, you served 5 years as the head of the Bureau of Public Sector Reform in Nigeria. And remarkably, if I can use those words, you maintained your senior government role despite what was an unheralded change of government. And anybody who knows Africa, and particularly West Africa, where I've spent much of my career will know that when there's a change of government, there's usually a change of pretty much all personnel. But you managed to pretty much serve 2.5 years of your 5 years for each government. How did you manage that quite possibly unique experience?
So it was actually 4 years, so 2013 to 2017. So in Nigeria, chief executives often have either a 4-year term or a 5-year term, renewable, and mine was a 4-year term. I think the funny thing about it is that I was, when the new government, when it was clear that the previous government had lost the election, I was actually responsible for compiling and editing the handover notes from one president to the other. Not many people knew that actually. And it was very, very difficult work, but we got it done in the end. And then when the incoming government was preparing for government, having won the election, I was actually the only serving member of the then current government that was invited to the policy retreat that the new government had put together sort of a week before taking power. And I remember that I had to seek the former president's approval to attend, you know, because I was in this unusual situation where I was the only serving member of the government. And the former president said, well, you've given me hell for 2 years. I'm sure you'll give them hell too. So please go ahead and attend. And I did. And the good thing is that, you know, that everyone recognized that I wasn't at all politically inclined either way. I was a technocrat doing my work, and that I'd worked with governments all across the world for very many years. So it was clear to everyone that I wasn't politically partisan. It was clear to the new government that I wasn't, as we say in the UK, I didn't have my hand in the till, so I wasn't soiling my integrity. I was one of the first to publicly declare his assets, one of the first appointees of government to publicly declare his assets. It does help that I ran a bureau that didn't have any money, so I wasn't even tempted. So, but it's always good that the little you have, you can at least demonstrate that it is possible to first of all, to be a Nigerian and not be corrupt. Secondly, to be a Nigerian government official and not be corrupt, and to lead by, by example. It's also one of the reasons why I was the first government official to publicly defend his draft budget on social media. And if you know how distrustful social media is of government, you realize that actually going to the National Assembly to defend the budget after having done that was a piece of cake. Because social media believes everybody in government is a thief, everybody is out for themselves, but we were able to get to a position where people started saying, actually, he's different from the others. And we're also able to get some of our colleagues, the Statistician General of the Federation, to follow that example and also defend his budget on social media. And the Executive Secretary of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative similarly defended his draft budget on social media. So we started a culture where people actually started to see that everybody wasn't in government for corrupt purposes. And since leaving government, I'm fortunate that I continue to provide support to the federal government, to governments across all political parties, state governments across all political parties, because like you said, for me, the vocation is how can we get government to function better for citizens, regardless of who is in power.
I think, that's great. I remember you defending your budget on social media, actually, because as you know, but many of the audience won't, I was working on the anti-corruption agenda for the UK ahead of the big anti-corruption global conference that was organised by our former Prime Minister David Cameron, and at which Nigeria played quite a significant role. And I think also it's worth mentioning that you maintain friendships in both the APC and the PDP to this day. And that really is something that I think is great to see and commendable. I'm not sure. Often people that are politicians are really also quite friendly behind the scenes. So I think that even does extend to some of my own friends in political circles in Nigeria. But nevertheless, they're not always so open about it. But it's quite open and evident that you do have good and deep friendships, Joe, in both camps, so as to put it. And long may that continue to be an example to others. And I think it's evident to anyone who knows you, and I think even now evident to people that didn't before today, that public sector reforms really are at the heart of your interest. In essence, bringing a better life to citizens, despite limitations pertaining to finance, to population, to gender, and to any other form of discrimination. So during your time heading the BSPR, there must have been, which I think in many ways, it must have been a dream job. What inspiring stories, maybe one or two, can you share about the impact you had for Nigerian people?
You're absolutely right, Andrew, that it was a dream job for me. In fact, it was almost, in a way, tied to my destiny, if you like, because I'd worked in a similar organization in the UK, the Prime Minister's Office of Public Service Reforms, under Prime Minister. And then when I moved back to Nigeria, I ran a DFID program called the Federal Public Service Reform Program. And that program actually provided technical assistance to the Bureau of Public Service Reforms and helped to develop the national strategy for public service reforms as far back as 2008. And so when the opportunity came to, and then before then, I had done a PhD between 2009 and 2013, essentially trying to research why certain things get to work, regardless of how daunting the environment is. So why, regardless of all the problems and all the challenges, do some things work in different places? So you could look at Somalia, you could look at Sudan and think Afghanistan and think nothing will work. This is a basket case, but I can bet you any amount of money you will find something that works in any of those environments. And so my study was to try and identify why do some things work regardless of all the challenges. So I did that study from 2009 to 2012. And then in 2013, I was appointed DG of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms. Essentially, the former president say, you've preached about these things for long enough, come and try and let's see you do it. So having worried about how I was going to survive on a 70% pay cut, a 70% salary pay cut, both my wife and my mom, who are my two key advisors, essentially said, well, you can't back out now. You have an opportunity to actually deploy state power to do a lot of the things you've talked about. And so I very gladly took the job. Having taken it, I then quickly realized that government doesn't tend to fund intellectual work a lot. So particularly in developing countries. So people would rather fund roads and bridges and dams and things like that, which are really important because you need infrastructure if you're going to develop. But I think it's also important to fund intellectual type activities, research, reviews that can make things better. And so one of the things, knowing that I simply could not address all the problems, because as DG of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, you can see the entire system. You can see what's working in the system, you can see what's not working, you can see where the problems are and where you could intervene. But because there are such wide-ranging issues across the entire system, I realized I couldn't intervene in every single thing. So one of the things I did was to essentially ask the public. I did a survey and asked the public and said, okay, when you come in contact with government, what are the major pinch points? What are the pain points? And people identified 4 things. So the process of getting an international passport, the process of getting a driver's license, the process of getting tax clearance certificates, and the process of getting national identification. So those were the 4 things that were identified. And then people also raised, we also asked people, what bottlenecks of service delivery do you experience? And they also said, well, when we visit hospitals, it's usually an indeterminate wait, and we don't know when we're going to see a doctor. We don't know what's going to happen. People talked about the process of getting police bail. So on the one hand, the police says that bail is free. On the other hand, in reality, the experience of citizens is that it is not free. So we also looked at those processes and made strenuous efforts to try and improve them. And so in terms of driver's licenses, we were able to clear a backlog of 6 months that had built up before we intervened. In the area of passports, at least we got the passport service to be a lot more responsive than it was before. A number of Nigerians abroad could simply not get passport booklets to renew their passports with. So we intervened in that regard. It's an ongoing story. I think it was about 5 or 6 days ago that I celebrated 3 years of having rejoined DAI, and my successor in BPSR called me to congratulate me on that and wish me well. But you'll be surprised to know that I'm still working on improving the passport system. I was still a guest of the Minister for Interior, and he had made me a solemn promise that by March this year, the process of getting passports would have improved. We then had the COVID-19 situation, but I did remind him again at his birthday, and he reiterated his promise that as soon as we get the COVID-19 situation under control, he was absolutely committed to fulfilling his promise to me, which is to make it easier to get Nigerian passports. Again, 3 years after having left government, I'm still involved in identity management, and I was recently appointed as a member of the steering committee on Nigeria Digital Identification Scheme. And incidentally, we're trying to learn from India as to how he was able to, through his Aadhaar scheme, register 1 billion people within 5 years. So that's why I say these things are a vocation for me. The fact that I'm not in government doesn't mean I do not continue to work on them.
Great. I remember the passport story very well, and the gratitude even of the changes you were able to effect. But of course, you're right. You can always improve a service. There's no space not to continue that effort. And I think, you know, personally, one thing that happened with you, which probably didn't really impact on the public in a visible way, but which I thought was great from my point of view. My objective was to get Nigeria to sign up to the Open Government Partnership ahead of this conference that I mentioned on anti-corruption that was organized by David Cameron in London. And you were definitely instrumental in pushing that. And they continue to be, as I see, active and involved to this day on that agenda. And it's a tough agenda. You know, and I mean, you know, Nigeria is a country where poverty, a high population, and multiple issues around gender are long-standing challenges. And all of them, of course, are linked to different sustainable development goals, all impinge on delivering sustainable improvements to essential public services like education, like healthcare. So do you think that real inroads can be made around each of these headline issues? And if so, what will it take to achieve it?
Well, Andrew, you know I'm an incurable optimist, but my optimism is often founded on facts and experience. So yes, we definitely can make inroads. We can make improvements. However, I often say that with goals like the Sustainable Development Goals, there's a temptation to think that everything is equally important. They're all, of course, important, but not equally so, in my mind. And I think that what distinguishes a successful economy from an unsuccessful one is the capability that the successful ones have to produce. So the more productive you are, the quicker you can come out of poverty. And if you look at developed countries, you know, the UK, the US, Germany, their productive capacity is very, very high. And China's recent inroads into development have been hinged on productive capacity, essentially. So virtually everything in every store of the world these days comes from China, and you know, just the level of production is what has made it possible to lift 600 to 800 million people out of poverty in a 30-year period. And if you think about it, that Africa has a population of 1.1, 1.2 billion, you'll understand that if we're as productive as China, there will be no poverty in Africa in 50 years. So productive capacity is really important. The other thing that is really important is strong governance, because all of your efforts can very, very easily be undermined by weak governance. So if you have a poor electoral system that leads to crisis, you're not going to deliver the SDGs, because there's a nexus between security, peace, and development, and all of those things must work together. So you must have a secure environment, a peaceful environment, in which the SDGs can strive. You must have, if you have a high level of corruption, then whatever efforts you make will simply be swallowed up by corruption. So it's very important that you have strong governance. Donors can, of course, help. And, again, I never miss an opportunity to recognize the support that the UK government provides to very many countries around the world, including Nigeria. And some of that support is not only about funds, it's not only about money, it's also about being together in the trenches to try to solve often very difficult problems. So donors can definitely help, provide examples from elsewhere, provide technical assistance. But at the end of the day, if governance is not strong and robust, then you get a situation where there becomes a reliance on donor support. And at some point, a donor will say, but Nigeria is a middle-income country. India is a middle-income, an upper middle-income country. Why should we continue to use UK taxes to support these countries? Why aren't they doing it for themselves? And so that is the reason why it is of crucial importance that we get a government that functions well in all of these environments, that is able to leverage on the catalytic effects that donor support brings, with the knowledge that if Nigeria is going to develop, it will develop with Nigeria's own resources. If India is going to develop, it will develop with its own resources. So that's why it's crucially important that we don't do what is called in the system substitution, thinking, oh, the donors are going to pay for our healthcare. DFID or USAID or the Gates Foundation are going to pay for our healthcare. It is not sustainable. We need to prioritize our human development. We need to ensure that the health of our people come first, and that we have a sustainable means of dragging ourselves out of poverty. Sorry, I've gone on, but this is an area of passion.
This is the passion of yours. I mean, and I mean, also in Nigeria, as in India, I think there is an opportunity. Obviously, some aspects have to be dealt with at the center, but then, you have a federal structure, very similar to the one in India, and you can do a lot of business in states. And everywhere that I went to 20 states in Nigeria over the course of my 3 years there. I always take a little bit of extra interest in those states where I have happy memories and spent time. And your home state of Ebonyi is one that has, I think, enjoyed quite some success and progress since I've left.
Yes, we're very pleased with the progress of the states, and I am an honorary advisor to the state government. So honorary means I don't get paid, but I do all the work. So we've been able to get Ebonyi to improve dramatically in terms of openness and transparency, and the World Bank State Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Scheme, which actually puts money direct into a government's Treasury if they were to take certain accountability and transparency initiatives. We expect to get in the region of 12 to 13 million US dollars for Ebonyi State this year as a result of the things we've done. And I was actually very proud of Governor Dave Umahi when he said all of our finances are online. And so if you're a petition writer, please go on our website and all the resources you need to write your petition are there. And that is the level of confidence we have in the transparency that we're putting in place. Having said that, there are also a number of visible changes. I believe our road network is one of the best in the country currently. A lot of infrastructural development. We, of course, need to do more on human development, on health and education, particularly primary health and primary education. And those are areas in which we're working a lot more with the government on. But yes, I think a number of improvements have taken place since you last visited, and you'll be pleasantly surprised by a number of things if you were to visit now.
Well, I will never forget the hospitality of Governor Umahi for former High Commissioner Port Arkwright and I when we visited, and I remember we had the joy of your presence for that occasion too. And of course, it was one of the poorer states in the south of Nigeria that he inherited. So it's great to hear that things are moving in the right direction, and we look forward. But I want to take our discussion now beyond Nigeria and ask you a global question. So thinking about the world order and the multitude of bodies and organizations, both big and small, working towards SDGs, do you believe it's working? If so, what gives you that confidence? I know you're an optimist, so we'll see how that plays out. And if not, what do you think needs to be changed?
Do I think it's working? Yes, and it's good that you asked me the question from a global perspective. And so my answer is also hinged on a global perspective, which is that the world has become less poor than it was in 1990 when we started the MDGs. So we had the MDGs for 10 years, and then we've had the SDGs, and global poverty has reduced in that time. I think that fact is incontrovertible. But is it working? As is always the case, Andrew, it's working in some areas, but not in others. So if you take an aggregate view, like the one I've just taken, it can sometimes mask real inequalities in various places. So overall, poverty has reduced globally. But in some places and in some countries, it's actually worsened. It's actually extreme poverty has actually deepened, and Nigeria and India are examples of countries that are battling with extreme poverty. But some things have improved. The advent of the internet has made it possible for more people to have access to online education. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic also brought into sharp focus the continued reliance of the world on technology, because all of a sudden, people realized that they didn't actually have to take that flight they always took every 2 weeks, and they didn't have to have the face-to-face meetings, and they didn't have to run huge offices with huge generators and all of that. And So some things have changed in terms of healthcare. Every day we're getting more cures to more diseases. Some of the diseases that were killing people off very quickly, HIV, AIDS, a number of different cancers, a number of different communicable diseases, we're beginning to find cures to them, or at least ways to manage them better than we have in the past. So it's working in very many respects, but very many people still have too little to eat. Very many people still have access to, very few people, very many people still have too little access to decent sanitation.
Mm.
A lot of women are still disadvantaged and discriminated against. There are still a lot of people that don't have an identity, that are sort of almost stateless and that do not exist within formal systems. So there is still a lot to do, but just like overall, I think we made a lot of progress with the MDGs, while a number of challenges remain. I think the SDGs are going to be the same, but the SDGs, I think, are a little more focused than the MDGs were, and are focused on things that can actually catalyze change in different areas. I think, though, that many governments need to internalize the goals more into their development planning process. So in very many cases, the goals almost exist in isolation of the development planning that a number of countries are doing. And I think a closer integration will make it easier to achieve the goals. But at least we started with data, which we didn't have when we started the MDGs. So at least at the start of the SDGs, there was sufficiently robust data about where we are. And that always helps with planning. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Data is undoubtedly very important, although it has to be the right data, and that's another discussion. I wanted to just progress this a bit further. I mean, the theme of the discussion, as we've advertised it, is a nexus between governance and improved service delivery. And the global audience today are, I'm sure, going to be interested if there might be any templates that you prescribe for emerging economies to deliver on.
It's a very good question, Andrew, and it's particularly relevant for people like me who try to change the way that government works. So often what we did is you have a plan, you have a strategy, and then you design it and say, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put this law in place, and I'm going to do a review of the ministry or department or agency, and then I'm going to train all the staff so that they know exactly what is expected of the new system. And when I do all of that, service delivery should improve. What we then found out is that it never works as smoothly as that. There's always, it always gets stuck between when you do the plan and when service delivery improves. It gets stuck somewhere in the middle. And you'll be interested to hear, Andrew, that I went into government in Nigeria doing academic research on the importance of political will when you want to drive change. I finished my 4 years in government having pivoted to doing research on when political will is not enough to drive change. So what we did is to flip the script and start the reform from the end. So focus first on service delivery. So what do we need to get this service to work? What do people want of this service? And once we do that through surveys, focus group discussions, engaging with the public, we say to the immigration service or to the driver's licensing authority, this is what people want. Can you go and do it? Of course, the delivery agent will always tell you, oh, it's difficult to do because we don't have power, we don't have diesel, we don't have enough funding, we haven't been sufficiently trained, we don't have allowances, the customers are unruly. There'll always be a reason why they cannot deliver that service. But if you start with, okay, this is the end in mind, then you need to go and reconfigure your operation to deliver that service. So if you start from the end and saying, okay, the purpose or what we want is for every Nigerian or Indian to be able to get a new passport within 7 days or within 14 days. Whatever you need to do to achieve that, it is the responsibility of the head of that passport service to go do it. And we say to them, well, you have the power, you have the authority. If you need to go seek for more money, then you need to go and do so. And then you find that they actually have the capacity to do it. But because they've been focused on just going through the process, they are not focused on it in that way. So you could see that without actually spending any more money or any significant large amount of money, we're able to clear the 6-month backlog of driver's licenses. We're able to clear the backlog of passports, people obtaining passports in all of the Nigerian embassies abroad, including the UK. People were able to get into Nigerian passport services in the US and in Canada and obtain their passports within 4 to 5 hours. And it didn't take any more effort, it didn't take any more expenditure other than just focusing on the result. So what is the result? How many passports are you actually delivering within how long? And that was a question that nobody was actually asking. So at the time we went and started asking this question, the heads of these agencies were saying, nobody had actually asked us that in about 10 years. So that was how we were able to change the script. So if you start with the end as the thing you want to focus on, and then work your way backwards, you find that when you've said, okay, I need to deliver a passport or a driver's license within 14 days, then you want to restructure the organization in order to do so. Then you want to train the staff to be able to meet that 14-day deadline. And then everything else you need to do cascades from that target. So that was how we were able to change the approach from the one we initially started with.
Thank you very much. I think that's very insightful and hopefully of interest to a number of listeners. I'm going to ask you one more question, but just to flag to those who are listening, anybody who has a question for Dr. Joe, please get it posted up now so that we can ask him. If there should be a little bit of time. My last question is quite short. If I may say so, I think you are an excellent ambassador for Nigeria. I try to dabble in the same myself, small as they say in the South. But before the questions, so many people have a very strong negative perception about your country. I can say about my adopted country even perhaps. In just a few words, what do you say to those people?
I say to them that that some of the negative perception they have is founded, because we do have some of our people that that go abroad particularly, and give the country a bad name. But they're a very, very tiny minority, very tiny minority. There are about 200 million or so Nigerians. If you go to places like the US and the UK, majority of the people that have postgraduate qualifications are Nigerians in those countries. Our people are hardworking. They are one of the most friendly societies on earth, I think. You may see us having very robust exchanges and think we're actually fighting among each other, but it's not. It's actually we're outspoken. We enjoy life. We love life. We travel. We're in every single country in the world. We mingle. We develop economies. We build societies. So. A lot of the negative images that people have is very, very far from reality. That is not to say that there aren't problems. There are. But tell me which society of the world doesn't have some problems or the other.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. I concur with all of that. And that was to be my rhetorical question: which country doesn't have its problems? Unfortunately. Many do, but Nigeria is a great place, and you should definitely look at it differently. Joe and I both tweet about Nigeria quite regularly in a positive sense, both being optimists. I'm happy that with that interlude, we've got a couple of questions for you, Joe. The first one is from an anonymous poster who says that they wanted to commend your efforts on how you enlighten the public and make information accessible. Well done, Chief. So maybe they're a Nigerian, I'm not sure. My question, or his question, or her question, is how did you go through this without your colleagues pushing to the edge, and how did you respond to that?
Interesting question. One thing I did find out when I worked in the Nigerian government is actually that, to the surprise probably of many members of the public, many people in government do want to do well, and many are victims of the system, and so there's actually quite a healthy cohort of people who want to do well, want government to function better, who mutually support each other and strengthen each other. There are, of course, some that just want to do no work and cut away government money, but you'd actually find out that the majority actually want an improved system. Because we're all Nigerians, we all experience healthcare, we all drive on the same roads, we all are subject to the same police. But what I find is that many people simply don't know how to make those changes. And so if we provide them with that support, many would actually drive changes. So surprisingly, I didn't meet any opposition. I didn't meet much opposition to anything I wanted to do in government. So people think maybe I had to force certain things through. No, I was always pushing through an open door. Everybody wanted it to be better.
Thank you. No, that's great. And there's another good question here from somebody called Mahesh. Good governance is about transparency. What role has technology played in creating the necessary transparency in Nigeria? And I think you have addressed that to a point, but would you like to add a little bit further beyond the publishing your assets online and the example from Ebony?
Yes, please. And that's because technology is, to my mind, one of the key drivers for development, for transparency, and for accountability. And most of the reforms that I've been involved with, the ones that have been sustainable have been the ones that have been hinged on technology. And so through technology, you're able to track the movement of funds. Through technology, you know who has applied for what. You can even know who has logged into a system at what point. And even when people try to sabotage the system, there are times that we try to make recruitment into government offices transparent. And we say, there shall be no sale of forms. Everybody should go on the website and apply on the website. And some public servants will still go and disable the website to ensure that you still come and get a physical form for which they will charge you money. But the beauty of technology is you can actually tell who disabled it and when. And so you can track it in that way. And using technology, we have made our procurement systems a lot more transparent. We've made our banking system a lot more transparent. So the government integrated financial information system can see what everybody is spending. Technology has enabled us to implement a treasury single account. So at the time some of us started working with the Nigerian government, some government agencies had bank accounts abroad that the federal government was not even aware of. That is no longer the case. So everything has been consolidated into the treasury single account that the accountant general sees every night in terms of what has come in and what is going on. So absolutely, technology is really, really key to accountability and transparency, and is a major tool for fighting corruption, and is a key lever for sustainability going forward.
No, that's right. The Treasury single account was a big deal when when that change was made during my time working in Nigeria, and I'm glad to hear that it continues to have a positive impact that was always intended. I have to say that I also had a fantastic trip with a group of wonderful Nigerian colleagues to the UK to look at beneficial ownership.
Right.
Where we travelled around and met a whole bunch of stakeholders. I was actually flying back with Emirates, if I'm not wrong, and they delayed me, so I missed the first meeting with the ministerial representative, Judge Pickles.
Right.
But we did get a lot out of that visit, and indeed many other, and it really did underline to me that can-do attitude and real determination. And I was so impressed when we came back to Nigeria that there was a real focus on delivering and harnessing what was learned from that relatively short trip. There's a couple more questions. Let me ask you them both.
But before you ask the two questions, you'll be very pleased to know that a new Companies and Allied Matters Act has since been passed, which entrenches beneficial ownership into the law. So that is something to report, that all of your efforts from 2016 has now found its way into legislation now.
That's fantastic, and that was exactly the plan that was discussed after our trip. So it shows what we can do. And I mean, one of the two questions from Madu Piola is, what can we do to change that so-called system in Nigeria, especially in the Nigerian government? And then there's another question from Gayatri, who asks, how do you think developing economies and developed economies could collaborate in developing sustainable solutions? So I think probably these are the last two questions we're going to have time for. So please, Joe, let me put them to you.
Okay, so how do we change the system? There are a number of ways, in my view. The first is that the society, the citizens, need to be more demanding of their government. We're still in a situation where many government officials feel that they are doing the public a favor by serving them. I always say to people that many government officials don't fully understand the meaning of the word public servant, and that a public servant is a servant of the public. And a servant anywhere does what they are told by their master. The servant wakes up before their master, doesn't go to bed until after their master goes to bed, and doesn't answer back. And make sure that the master is happy. And so if you're a public servant, that is the mindset to have when you're serving the public. And when we don't get it as citizens, we should demand more from our governments. The second is that we in demanding more from our government, we need also to be better citizens. So we need to pay our taxes, and in cases where people pay taxes, the incentive to demand better governance is higher. So because if you're paying taxes and you can feel the pinch in your pay that X percentage is coming out of taxes, out of your salary, then you're more likely to demand to know how that money is spent and what it is used for. You're also more likely to pay attention to who you're voting into government, and you're more likely to actually go out and physically vote. Because it's important to you that you have the right kinds of people managing your money. So all of these things are ways in which we can start to look again at the systems that we have. People need to be interested when a bill is going through the National Assembly. They need to attend public hearings. They need to complain and petition public organizations when they don't get the kind of services that they get. In terms of collaboration between developing and developed countries, very good question. And I think, again, this is one area in which I would, again, give the UK government a lot of credit. The relationship is not one of donor and donee. The relationship is one of partnership. And if you're in a partnership, it is two partners complementing each other's strengths. And it is two partners being able to, one, encourage each other when things get difficult, and two, tell each other the truth. You are doing well in this area, but you're not doing well in the other area. And it is not about it is not about the developed country knowing it all and simply bringing a template to implement in the developing country. It simply doesn't work in that way. It is about both parties working in partnership to find solutions that benefit the whole world. So if developing countries don't have safety and peace and security and economic development, developed countries will worry about terrorism, they worry about illegal immigration, they worry about so many different other things. So we're all one human race, and it's important that we work together and support each other to get a better society for all.
Great. So just to have an add-on to that last question, how can two developing countries, say for example India and Nigeria, funny I should pick those two, how do they collaborate?
It's a very good question, Andrew. And one of the things we need to do is to realize that, look, we have the responsibility for our own development. And so the usual thing that people used to do with donor funds of, oh, we need to go on a study tour to see how they do it over there. We need to go on a million study tours before we know what to do. And those study tours must be to the US and to the UK, and it doesn't work. It makes no sense. And
Mine
so
did.
I was to you. And so I was talking to you about the work we want to do on digital identification and why we need to learn from what India has done. And we're a global world now. The internet is there. I don't need to come on a study tour to India to do that. I can engage in a video conference with the Population Commission in India. We can share templates and experiences. So yes, we can look at how similar societies have solved similar problems. Because when we actually look at how developing countries have solved particular problems, it's more relatable than than a country that doesn't have to worry about income support to the jobless. So if you have a society that is similar to yours, the experiences you get from those countries are likely to be more relatable to the particular problems and challenges that you're facing. Of course, every society is different. The political economy is different. The makeup of the society is different. The laws are different. But we can collaborate better and strengthen each other more as equals and as peers going forward. So I think there's a huge scope for developing countries to collaborate more than has been the case so far.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I know there's more questions, but we have really come to the end of our hour. I want to thank you for your candidness and openness, Dr. Joe, which I expected none less, but nevertheless, you haven't disappointed me in that respect. It's good to hear that you continue to fight the good fight and crusade for a better Nigeria for the majority of people through these ways that we've explained, all linked to the importance of good governance. Really, I enjoyed the chat. I hope those who listened also enjoyed. Thank you for your kind words about my country too, and about our collaborations with Nigeria. I do agree to your point that there shouldn't be study visits for the sake of them. Absolutely, that's quite correct. And just my tip is that whenever I offer a study visit, because they're always on the wish list, I will tell people, okay, sure, we'll have a study visit, but then you're going to work damn hard before, during, and after. And if you don't deliver what we've agreed, that's it. The door's shut. There'll be no more. So the one that we spoke about, which has now delivered, I think those guys are probably ready for the next level. They probably earned it, even given the update you've given. But it has to be managed in that way. It can't be, well, we want to go to this list of countries first and do it. No, you're quite right. So anyway, thank you. Thank you very much on behalf of Buzz on Earth, on behalf of myself too. I hope we'll have more chance to interact in the future. I think you have much more fascinating things to share in this area. I hope that personally we'll get a chance to meet around your birthday later this in October coming. All the best.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Andrew. It's always a great pleasure talking to you. My regards to the family. And thanks very much to Buzz on Earth for putting this together. It provided a platform for me to chat with my dear brother, Andrew. The only thing that would have been nice, I would have been doing it over a beer, but there will always be opportunities for that.
That will be later in October, inshallah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Okay. Take care.